right, everybody, welcome into Concrete Jungle. It's been a week. That will happen every now and then, though, depending upon the way holidays fall. So, welcome inside the studios of FingerLakes1.com. Paul Russo, joined as always by Kyle Evans. Kyle, good to see you. It's been a week. Have good fourth for you. Assuming plenty of baseball that you were watching.
Mixed in with some golf.
Really?
Went on the golf course for the first time.
And how did we do?
I played as bad as the Mets did for the first two seasons.
Oof. Oof.
My swing just feels odd. I feel like I'm a baseball player.
Right.
And it just feels very uncomfortable.
I've had the same problems, but, you know.
A lot of line drive, low hits.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I did a lot of different things, actually, over the break, I would say.
Nice.
But yeah, it was a good one. How about yours?
Can't complain. It was pretty good. It was down in Pennsylvania, so enjoyable. Shout out to Sheets. But yeah, got to took in the AA Erie Seawolves. They hosted the Akron Rubber Ducks, so that was pretty fun, and yeah, fun time by all. So I can't complain too much. Before we go any further, before we jump in, thank a couple of our sponsors. Sano Propane, 4 generations strong, is a trustworthy and family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at sanoPropane.com for more information, or you can call them toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane and Dock Daddy. Unleash your waterfront potential and let Dock Daddy install custom dock, stabilize your slope and shoreline, install seawall, and more, including barge service. A local company serving the Finger Lakes homeowners. You can call them at 585-739-5415 today and schedule a consultation. You know, this weather would have been perfect for Dock Day to get out and help out locally here for people. So make sure you give them a shout for your dock needs. So, Kyle, a lot to get to cover in a week, so we're going to be doing what we kind of do when we've had this situation before, do a couple hot hits and kind of get going on everything here. We'll begin with the Yankees, 4-3 in the last 7 days. So just a hair kind of over 500 ball for them. I kind of want to begin, though, with Anthony Volpe. When we last spoke, it's kind of weird how timing works of everything, right? I think the conversation finally was starting to shift a little bit from the whole entire send him down type thing to, okay, kind of find his own. In the past week, he has really been in a groove to the point that even this morning I got a push notification for fantasy baseball about he's become a top 10 pickup in fantasy. So it's been nice kind of watching him flourish, and, you know, it's funny, we'll be talking when we get to the Mets really about Francisco Alvarez once again, but it's funny how really, you know, you give these kids just more and more just time to kind of find themselves and get it figured out, that lo and behold, they go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and the big joke all over Twitter is, you know, how he fixed his swing, and thanks to Austin Wells. I don't know if you ever saw that story, Paul, but Austin Wells went over and had dinner with him one night during an off day and kind of talked to him about his swing, and he made some adjustments, and since the dinner that they had, he's been hitting like 340. So, yeah, you can just tell, too, he's more, the way his front foot's placed, it's a little different, and he's starting to hit the ball the other way, too, as well. And a lot of multi-hit games mixed in there, and even some hits against really good pitching. You know, the Orioles have some really good relievers, and, you know, he had a home run last night. So, yeah, he's been one of the major bright spots here, especially with, you know, Rizzo and Stanton, you know, kind of, doing all right, but not great.
Yeah, and, you know, you mentioned last night, but, you know, he's been clutch here over the course of the past week. He really has been, mainly against Baltimore, who you talk about their relievers, but, I mean, their starters, too, have been absolutely phenomenal all year for the most part. And now Tyler Wells has become more and more of a household name to more baseball fans outside of, say, just Baltimore and AL East opponents, right? it's kind of fascinating too because you mentioned the swing element, and I've noticed he's had more of a. You talk about the front foot, and that's where it kind of comes from, right? More of a close stance in my mind, almost in a way. And he's always been, to me, right? He's a fast guy, and so he doesn't necessarily look to have like a home run or anything like that, right? I mean, we were talking about him 2 weeks ago, how he's finding himself on the base path, stealing bases, and creating offense that way. And you mentioned the Austin Wells thing, which I hadn't seen, but a couple guys who clearly know each other well enough that they can meet up and kind of figure this stuff out together in a way, right? It's huge. It's huge, right? And Austin Wells is presumably somebody we'll more than likely see in pinstripes here within the next calendar year, I would assume at this point. So, yeah, I mean, you can't complain, I guess, in that regard either. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, he did get thrown out on the base paths for the first time this year. But, yeah, when he's on, he's a major threat. And, of course, what's his name from Oakland, just running away with stolen bases, as well as Ronald Acuna Jr.
Stewie Relez.
But Volpe, for being a rookie, I think he has 17 stolen bases now. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's funny because I forgot to put in the notes for the Mets, and we'll talk about them because they're also just been on the base paths and incredible. I want to talk about, too, another kind of bright spot to me that's kind of been happening, and you were actually the one to bring it to my attention, really, a little bit, was Kiner-Falefa, who, we've talked about, right, what was his role going to be going into this year, and I wouldn't say he struggled. It was kind of on par for what he did last year, to be completely honest, to start the year, but of course the last 10 games, he's been about as good a Yankee hitter as been all year. Maybe the power numbers aren't there, obviously, but that's just not him. But average to RBIs to all the other stuff in between, it's been IKF. And I think part of it is maybe collectively more playing time, right? I mean, it's something that we talk about, right? You just get more opportunities to see things and do your work and do your craft. That happens, right? But I think part of it is just also the fact that, he's finally settled into his role with the team, and it's kind of now allowed him to just stabilize across the board and go out there and perform. And it's kind of funny because, I certainly probably am the IKF apologist, more so than anybody. But, I mean, when he has the past 10 days like he has been, I mean, it's hard to kind of knock a guy. And to be fair, you look at maybe the last 7 days like we are in this sense since we last spoke, 4-3, slightly above 500, and the Yankees had made up a game and a half to Tampa Bay. I don't think the Yankees maybe get a couple of those wins without IKF. It's hard to kind of maybe outright disagree in a sense. I'm sure there may be some other room. We just talked about Volpe being clutch in certain spots and everything like that, but IKF has been a really good, more or less, this hitter to table set within the lineup at various spots over the course of the past 10 days.
Yeah, and his approach at the plate is clearly different. He's working counts. He's hitting way more fly balls. I heard the stat yesterday. His fly ball percentage is up to 26.
Yeah.
Last year was 13.
Yeah.
And the league average is 24, I want to say. I might be off a couple on the numbers a little bit. But, yeah, he's hitting more fly balls. Like, what was it, Monday? Mm-hmm. He drove in a run with a sacrifice fly, and there was some stat that he had only, 2 of those over his last 112 games. So, yeah, he's just doing things that he hadn't really done last year. I think he's trying to drive the ball more rather than just put it in play and hit all these ground balls. So, yeah, it's been great to say. It's great to see. And we do have some breaking news.
Go ahead.
Davey Garcia is up from Scranton, and he's replacing Vasquez on the roster until Rodon's activated tomorrow. So it'll just be one day.
Right.
Probably won't even be used tonight. Right. But, yeah, he'll be in the pen tonight, with Michael King not available after going multiple innings last night. So he's probably more of the long guy in the pen.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't want to we can kind of maybe do that a little bit of a discussion now. Yeah, I was kind of wondering because they did the Vasquez option last night.
Yep.
It was seems a bit premature for Rodon given the fact that we know he's coming in theory, tomorrow.
Yeah, he is on the game note, so it is official. Rodon will be starting tomorrow.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, it was just one of those things where I saw him like, that's a bit premature, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that would make sense, right? I mean, they're bringing up a guy in Devi who's more or less technically a full-time reliever now. So,
Yep.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. About to say, I mean, he couldn't bring up Matt Crook. They sent him down to borderline immediately when they called him up. So, that'll happen. All right. We probably should address a little bit of an elephant in the room here. Speaking of pitching staff, Jimmy Cordero, of course, on the heels right of Domingo Germán in the perfect game. Cordero gone for the year. Domestic violence violated the policy with obviously the MLB, but now is also going to be in his own world of trouble within it. And he was a spot, especially early on in the season, in my mind, for the Yankees that really stepped up and needed to be done. But now, I think the future professionally for him is a bit murkier. Obviously, timing, like I said, just it couldn't have been at a more interesting time, right? Given the fact that Germán throws this perfect game last week, and I don't find it coincidental that they were co-AL players of the week. Obviously, the MLB does not want to be parading around a domestic abuser, and they shouldn't anyway. But Cordero gets dinged for it, and I don't want to be the guy who recklessly speculates in this realm, right? But I know I jokingly said to you off air, but I think it's worth questioning, right? Is there some sort of potential oversight with the Yankees here with some of these guys at this point? To go back to someone we talked last week, both me and you were pretty much on board with the Yankees just getting rid of Germán last year. They didn't. And he's kind of, like I said, he's stayed out of trouble since his domestic abuse. So I don't know where they can kind of go with Cordero here. I'm not saying it's the fair thing to do, but I don't see how you could drop one guy and not the other guy, or vice versa in this situation. I think the Yankees have firmly put themselves in a more or less a rock, stuck between a rock and a hard place in this situation.
Yeah, the news definitely caught me off guard, and I think a lot of people are forgetting, this is a bigger deal in baseball, but Cordero was one of the major bright spots in this pen, and if you remember, he actually made that spot start in Toronto and had 2 perfect innings.
Right.
So, he will be missed. They have the best bullpen in the league, but he was a big part of it. So hopefully somebody else can, fill that void and continue to make it a really good bullpen. But it sucks to see this stuff continue to happen, this off the field stuff, like you said with Germán and now him, and hopefully these guys, I guess Germán, went and did some counseling and stuff to try to help him, and I would say it's worked. I mean, we haven't heard any more issues with him, and hopefully Cordero will do the same thing, but I don't expect Cordero to be a Yankee anymore. And there is a rule. Everyone wants him DFA'd. He cannot be DFA'd until after his suspension's over.
Yeah, there's also, because I know, I forgot where I necessarily saw it. I can't remember if it was like Reddit or Twitter. More or less, it was talking about the financials of it. And because it's funny how these things work. If this happened like a month ago, the Yankees could technically have DFA'd him and not paid him. But because he reached a level within his service time meeting, some sort of vesting thing, if they were to DFA Cordero, they would have to pay him in full. And I know it's not a ton of money that he's making, but these teams obviously go with the money element of it. The difference being he's actually going to be making less anyway because the Yankees put him on the restricted list also during the suspension, meaning that he will not be paid 100% of his salary, which is, I think, if there's any consolation prize to not DFAing him, I think that'd probably be it. But I think that's not for me to outright say or speculate on in that sense because, frankly, I think, like I said, we know my stance on this, we know your stance on it, and our stances remain probably unwavered no matter the outcome in this situation.
Yep. Hopefully, he gets the help he needs, and I'm sure he'll be back eventually with some team. But like I said, I don't think it'll be the Yankees.
I do want to pose one quick question here because we are kind of, I think, already running along a little bit in terms of the tooth of talking Yankees. We go through the weekend, and Luis Severino had another rough start. And he does, not to jump too far ahead, he does get the start tonight, Thursday night against Baltimore. But, we kind of, we said on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and we've kind of been talking anyway about it a little bit, but are the Yankees kind of encountering what I call the Severino problem here almost, where, he's probably supposed to be your 3 guy now, but, exclude Rodon out of this for the time being. He was your 2, going to be the 2 of the future, and I know he's coming off the injury still and technically and everything like that, but to me, if we weren't allowing ourselves to do that so much with Verlander at this point, we can't do it with Severino. So my question to you, Kyle, is: do the Yankees have a Luis Severino problem, frankly, here that they're going to have to deal with?
Yes, they do, and it's okay to be concerned. He literally said it himself. I don't know if you saw his comments, but he said he feels like his pitches have been pretty good, and he doesn't know why they're getting hit so hard, and he's been trying to figure it out between starts with Matt Blake, and he had that one good outing, shutout outing against Texas, against a great offensive team, and then all these other teams, he's just giving up home runs left and right. I think that's 12 now this year in 40 innings. So the home run ball's killing him. His velocity continues to dip. Late in his last start, around the 4th, 5th inning, it was dropping 3 or 4 miles per hour. So I don't know what's going on. He said he's healthy. Boone says he's healthy. But is he really healthy? This is a contract year. So is he just trying to pitch through something? I don't know, but we'll find out more tonight, I guess.
I almost think it's both him and the Yankees trying to pitch through something because think about the time when they brought him back into the fold. The Yankees needed some sort of arm in that rotation at that point, and I don't know. People play hurt all the time in different sports, right? But to me, anyway, you can't go from shutting out an offense like Texas, right, to you go against an offense like St. Louis and completely just lay an egg.
And every ball seemed like it was getting hit hard. And that's another thing, too. These guys aren't just getting hits off them. They're literally crushing the ball. It's literally like it's batting practice. And it's concerning.
Definitely. Yeah. I was intrigued by your thoughts on it because, like I said, I think the problem is at the door. I think it helps, obviously, Rodon's going to be back into the fold for the Yankees. But, it's interesting. I almost feel, and I don't want to say there's this over-panic thing here, but I almost feel better, say, having Johnny Brito in the rotation than Severino at this point, or something along those lines. You know what I mean? Where it's at least what you're getting every outing with, say, Brito, whereas with Severino, you kind of do, but also kind of don't. I don't know. All right, let's talk about some injury updates, some roster moves here. The list for the Yankees is quite expansive, only because it's very detail-oriented this time around. So, Nestor Cortez threw a bullpen session in St. Louis when the Yankees were in and visiting the Cardinals. Says he didn't feel any stress or pain. He only threw 20 pitches during the outing. He said it was mainly all fastball and cutters. He said there was probably a pitch or two that was a slider. So, slowly building back up for Nestor at this point. And I'd say also the main thing there was the fact that he just didn't feel any pain or anything like that. And that's got to be a bigger deal. But I would hold off on that because, like I said, he only threw 1 or 2 sliders in that, and that's going to be the biggest stress on his arm no matter what because, fastball and cutter are similar grips. You're not putting anything extra on the pitch as opposed to if you're throwing, say, a slider or even a curveball for that matter.
Yeah, there actually was an update. He actually did throw a second bullpen, 25 pitches, and that was, I think, 2 days ago now at the stadium. No word on how many pitches he threw, but says he feels good. He'll throw another one this weekend. And then after that, they said he'll be facing live hitters. So I think their timeline's been basically right all along after the All-Star break late July. So getting him back would be good as long as he returns to his old form. I mean, if you remember, he kind of struggled a little bit too. And we were a little worried at times about him. I remember you were mentioning on the podcast that, is it time to worry about Nestor? So hopefully he comes back strong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is funny how we kind of outright talk about this. So maybe for the sake of us, Luis Severino doesn't end up on the IL or something. I don't know. I don't wish that on anybody. Yep. Trust me. Aaron Judge, so good news. They ruled out surgery. And it's come out within the past couple of days that he's actually prepared to more or less just play through the pain at this point. He himself said that he doesn't believe it's something that will be as immediate as even he has hoped. Could be even a couple of years if he to not feel any pain potentially. But what was interesting is on the back end of it, I did read that surgery in the offseason is still possibly on the table for him. But in addition to the catch that we saw him play in Oakland a couple weeks ago now, he has also done the, what do they call it, like non-contact T-swinging? I don't know. But he's at least progressing along baseball activity-wise still, as surgery has been shelved, at least for the time being. Let's piggyback off that quick. Kind of already mentioned it enough already, but Rodon, he's expected back in the rotation tomorrow. He made his final expected minor league rehab start on the July 1st with High Hudson Valley. Don't panic. It was just because they were the only minor league team home as opposed to Somerset and Scranton both being on the road. So nothing to worry about there, and that is how those two are looking at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be nice to get him back, a Friday night game. Hopefully that's a boost. Hopefully it goes well, too, because then you have the All-Star break. You don't want him to sit through the All-Star break if he gets lit up, thinking about it. But, yeah, I think it's a good matchup against the Cubs, his first start back. So hopefully it goes well.
Yeah. All right. A couple other just quick hits here. Jonathan Loizaga doing well, slowly building up the throwing program. Not too much of an update there. The main thing was that Boone more or less said that they aren't going to really rush him because just the workload for him at this point has been so few to get things going that it's just going to be a lot of pitch and catch for him at the moment, nothing off a mound as they slowly build him back up. And then Matt Crook, I mentioned, recalled and optioned, and as we already kind of mentioned a little bit here, Randy Vasquez also optioned to AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre. So that'll do it on the news and notes for roster and injury. Let's look here at the remaining game for the Yankees against Baltimore before welcoming the Cubs to town. We'll begin outright flat with tonight, 7:05 first pitch, Thursday night on ES. Kyle Bradish goes. He's 4-4 on the year for Baltimore against Luis Severino, 1-3 for the Yankees. I don't think I can really understand enough. The Yankees, like I said, they've gained a game and a half on Tampa Bay through the past week. Obviously, this is a big series against Baltimore. I think if we hypothetically did a podcast on Monday, I would be less than enthused just coming off the way the Yankees overall played against St. Louis. But I like the way that they've collectively played against Baltimore outside of last night. I think they get the series win today. I don't know if Severino's going to get the decision or not, though. If you're asking me outright to pick maybe in that lane, I just don't know. I don't feel confident. Like I said, just the way he's pitched, but maybe he's going to pitch up to the competition today and do it. But either way, I think the Yankees are able to get another game on Baltimore and take a pivotal 4-game series victory, 3-1 over Baltimore.
Yeah, I hope you're right. But I don't know. I'm feeling a split. The Orioles are too good to lose a series to the Yankees in my mind. So yeah, I'm just gonna stick with a split.
All right. So the last series before the All-Star break for the Yankees is home at Yankee Stadium against the Chicago Cubs. None of the Cubs starters have been announced yet, and technically none of course, it just did.
No, the PR department sent these out last night. They've been announced.
Okay.
Do you want me to name them off or?
let's say each day here. So tomorrow, Friday, 7:05 first pitch on Yes. We know that the Yankees will be rolling with Carlos Rodon, but the Cubs will be going with.
Jamison Tyone.
Oh, it's revenge game.
Yeah. So that's going to be quite the matchup.
All right, so so you only know about the Cubs then, is what you're saying, or do you know?
No, Yankees too.
Okay. So I figured on the notes I put in that Saturday, Sunday should be a combination of Cole and Herman, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Cole Saturday.
I figured. So Saturday, 105 on the official network of baseball viewing for Kyle Evans, Amazon Prime, or MLB Network if you're out of the New York market.
What? Yep. Saturday Prime game?
Surprise. Yes, it's a
Two this week?
Yep. Prime, or if you're out of the New York market, MLB Network. So that will be Garrett Cole then for the Yankees. Cubs are going with, can I take a stab and say something? Say a guess?
Yep.
Justin Steele?
No. It is a left-hander, though.
I don't know that. Oh, Smiley.
Yep. Yep.
And then Sunday, 1:35 on Yes or MLB Network. So we know Herman, and is this where like Kyle Hendricks comes in?
Yep.
Wow, my good.
With his 2.64 ERA.
Yeah. He's weird though. He because I've bet him a couple different times on different prop lines, and he's looked really good, but he's had a couple starts also since coming off the IL where it's been, I wouldn't say off the rails type stuff, but he'll have an inning where like he'll be really efficient pitch count wise, and then he'll get to like the third or fourth, and it's like a 20-something pitch inning.
Kind of like Jamison Tyone.
What's going on here? So Tyone's been all over the place.
6.93 ERA.
I'll go the Yankees. Get 2 of 3. The Cubs are plucky enough that I definitely feel like they could get 1. And frankly, they're playing some pissed off baseball right now. I don't know if you saw everything going on behind the scenes with the Milwaukee series, but nobody's happy in Wrigleyville right now. So I think the Yankees get 2 of 3 to wrap up even though we're already through the first half of the season, the de facto first half of the season.
Yeah, I think the Yankees have the starters they would want. Obviously, Rodon's a little question mark because you don't know how he's going to be. But if the offense shows up a little bit, I think they could sweep the series. But just to play it safe, I'll say they just take 2 of 3. Hopefully, that second win comes on Sunday so they can kind of go into the break, with a win. But yeah, it should be a good weekend for them.
All right, let's transition over to the Mets, where they have actually had a really good 7 days as well since we last spoke. They are 4-2. They did have an off day in there during the past week. And I just want to start with here, and then we can kind of jump into a couple of different things, right? They're winning. I know it's winning ugly for a few of these games, but winning's winning. And when you're just winning sometimes, that can solve a lot of problems. And frankly, I've noticed this more in this series against Arizona than I did against the Giants, even though the tail end of that Giants series was definitely a big plus for them. But they seem to just be having a different aura around them in this Arizona series. And I think it's more or less they're just out there, they're playing baseball. You could definitely tell they're having a little bit more fun in this Arizona series, all things considered, than maybe pretty much every other series and game they've played in so far this year. So I don't know if you feel the same way, but to me, it just feels like a different team right now in the past week. And I think, especially within the past few days, they're just kind of carrying themselves in a little bit of a better state than when we last talked last week.
Yeah, I was watching the game live last night. I'll admit it. I had my story written, 1-0 loss to the Diamondbacks. And then they put that 2-out ninth inning rally together. The reaction from the dugout, too, really stood out to me. It seems like there's finally energy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's just because the team they're playing is, a very good team. I mean, they're 13 games above 500. But yeah, it's the vibes are different lately. But then I just think back to that 5-game win streak in May, and they never built off from it.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're at 4. Are they going to lose the finale today, which would still be fine because they won the series, but then just go lay an egg this weekend?
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to see, don't get me wrong, but they've also dug themselves so deep that a 4-game win streak's not good enough to get back into this. They're going to have to really keep running in wins out there.
Right.
and hopefully, Carlos Carrasco continues to throw the ball well tonight. I'm sorry that I probably already
Spoiler alert.
yeah, but I think it all starts with him. You know the stat. When the
Definitely.
starter goes 6 innings, they're almost unbeatable.
I mean, look at it last night. Senga's longest outings in his MLB U.S. side career, right?
Yep.
And
Tied his career high in strikeouts.
right, I mean, and that's something that we'll jump on here in a second because I do want. It wasn't so much Senga because I think he's been the shining star out of that collective pitching staff this year anyway. So I didn't want to do too much on him. But we'll touch on that in a minute. I do want to jump to Alvarez because he has that clutch hit again last night. But he's been now in this spot a couple different times, and I don't think we've maybe talked about it enough, is the fact that he's really kind of stepped in as this clutch hitter for the Mets. And
I have a stat.
I think the title of the podcast kind of says it all because we talked about it with Volpe, and now we're doing it again with Alvarez. But these kids are all right. Like, they get it figured out, and they can do it. And, Alvarez is certainly, not to, pun not fully intended here, but he's stepping up to the plate and doing what he needs to do, and you have the stat of the day apparently, so I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I wrote it last night. He leads Major League Baseball in home run or game tying home runs or go ahead home runs in the 6th inning or later. So as you said, that's clutch written all over it. And it's kind of crazy that no one's even tied with him. He leads the league with 5 of those. And remember, he didn't even start the season with the team.
Right.
So that's just very impressive from a 21-year-old as well. So yeah, that was quite the stat that I saw last night.
And he officially has the Met catcher rookie record for home runs.
Yep. So
That's
finally
right.
some positive stats for the Mets.
Right. And look, I hate banging the drum as much as we do on some of these things here, but like, to me, it's just further proof about, you look at Volpe, you look at Alvarez, both had their struggles at certain points, right? But you give them enough time and they go out and they do their job, right? And they perform and they go above and beyond. And I know we haven't talked a ton about him lately either, but Brett Beatty's another one where he's finally getting more at bats and he's finally kind of coming around a little bit better. Kind of one of those things where, especially to me on the Met end of things, just bring up Vientos and Mauricio at this point and let it ride. I'm intrigued. We didn't bring it up with the Yankees, but you look at a guy like Everson Pereira, who is like first AAA at bat, cranked a home run. I mean, I go back to kind of something I always think about is, as much as no matter how good you are or anything like that, there's always somebody behind you that can do probably just as good a job as you when given the opportunity. And I think, personally speaking, you look at the Mets, and although it's been a stellar week for them, they still actually lost ground to the Atlanta Braves, at least in the division, right? Now, that being said, they gained at least on the Phillies in front of them. They stayed stationary to the Marlins above the Phillies. If you want a gun for the wild card spot here, which, they aren't going to, they won't be at that 12-game below 500 mark that we kind of thought they could be at going into the All-Star break. Kind of opens the door back up for, I think, maybe you don't buy, but maybe you don't sell at the deadline. If you want to go out, to me at this point, and contend this year, I think you got to bring up Vientos. I think you got to bring up Mauricio. And I think you got to just give these kids the shot and have them do it, honestly, at probably the most important time of the year.
Well, a week ago when you were here, I remember the Mets were 10 games out of the wild card, and now you look and they're 6.5. So in 7 days, they've gained some ground.
Yeah, I mean, three and a half's no joke.
But yeah, and like I said, they've dug themselves so far though that they can't go out and lose the next 2. They gotta maybe only 1 loss in 10 games. Do stuff what the Braves are doing to get back into this, which is don't lose very often.
Right.
And the teams that are in front of them, like the Cubs, are the Cubs really better than the Mets?
No.
Or the Padres? No. I mean, are the Padres? What are the Padres?
That's going to be an interesting series this weekend. Not to jump ahead too much, but that's going to be an interesting series this weekend.
And then the Brewers, the inconsistency with them, and the Giants. I mean, they're 3-7 in their last 10 now. Remember, after going on that win streak. So these teams that are in front of them aren't, in my mind, better than them. The Mets just have lost so many games. They've fallen behind those teams. So hopefully, for their sake, they just keep winning, and that's really what it's going to take.
I think a big part of it too is, and this is kind of like that last really major point I kind of want to talk about the Mets is their starting pitching the past week really has finally, I think, I'll call stabilized. Is it where they probably want to be? No. But you look at last night with Senga, right? We kind of talked about that already. But Verlander's finally put together a couple good starts in a row. Same with Scherzer. And I know their strikeout counts maybe aren't where that they thought they could be or where they should be, right, going into the season. But they've kind of stabilized themselves, right? And like I said, they've gotten a couple of good starts in a row. They got it going, right? David Peterson, I know it wasn't as good as a start Sunday as it was, Tuesday last week. But it was still a good start. It put the Mets in position to beat the Giants. And, you talk about Carrasco. This might be a kind of I wouldn't say a put-up or shut-up game for him in a way, but not to overshadow someone coming up here, but, Katana's not far away either in this from rejoining the Mets. So the starting pitching, I'll call it stabilized, and there's some bright spots going on there. The bullpen to that end as well has had, I would call it a decent week as well, but I'm watching the game Tuesday night on July 4th, and, Smith brings in the bases loaded. Robertson comes in on a dud inning or a trash inning, as I enjoy calling it, as a reliever. Gives up a run, but he's able to work out of it. It's one of those things in the back of my mind where I'm sitting there and I'm just going ew, God, here it is again, kind of in a way, right? And I don't know, and again, I don't want to overshadow something we're going to be talking about here in a second, but they make a trade for some relieving depth in the past week, only for one guy they DFA just so they can kind of clear 40-man spots and stuff like that. So, it's kind of like the positive end of things is the fact that it's stabilizing up, but the negative of it is just, again, although the bullpen, like I said, has looked good because there have been spots where they have held, like the Sunday night against the Giants, for example. They did their job. They held strong, but, to bring up Tuesday night, they almost blew it.
Yeah, the starting pitching, like you said, is the key here. I just looked up the stat. When a starter goes at least 6 innings, they're 25-4, and when they go 5 innings, they're 38-24. So that extra inning is huge with a bullpen that has just cost the Mets too many games this year. You look at some of these stats. I mean, they're really bad. In June, the Mets bullpen had a 4.45 ERA.
Mm-hmm.
In May, they had a 4.77. So far this month, they're at 3.60. But of course, we're only 60 or technically 5 because they haven't played their game tonight yet. So yeah, this is a time where they have to go out, and the bullpen just has to be better in general. I mean, these were 2 awful months back to back. Maybe they'll finally figure it out. And like I said, they have to go out and make a trade. I know they kind of already did, whatever, but you got to go do more. That's not good enough.
Yeah, that depth piece. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with depth pieces. Every team and every bullpen needs them, right? But the bigger deal with the Mets isn't so much the depth pieces at this point, and that's something that we've harped on for who knows how long, and and it didn't. It all kind of stems maybe from them just kind of not doing anything when Sugar got hurt in the World Baseball Classic, frankly. But that's retrospective at this point.
I do want to mention something too. It's kind of funny since that 10-game suspension that Drew Smith has been nothing short of awful. I mean,
he walked the bases loaded Tuesday night.
So is it does he actually need sticky stuff to actually perform? Because he's just Friday night he hung a slider over the plate, 3-run homer. Just hasn't been good.
Right.
Aside from Robertson, Ottavino, and Raley, all the other guys that are in that pen just aren't consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give them enough. So they really got to do something about it.
Yeah, and even then, the past couple weeks, I can think of, a couple of different times that specifically Raley and Robertson have been shaky at best.
Yep.
So. All right, let's jump in. A couple news and injury notes and roster updates for the Mets. Kind of mentioned it already a little bit, but Jose Katana Did struggle in his last rehab start with AAA Syracuse. And that was really only something. He had an elevated pitch count. He wasn't finding the zone all that well. Happens time to time for a pitcher. It wasn't anything like mechanically or anything like that. It was just kind of struggling. It happens from time to time, right? So the plan is he'll have one more rehab start. That'll come tomorrow, Friday, still with AAA Syracuse when they're in Worcester against the Who Sox. At that point, the plan would be a sim game at Citi Field during the All-Star break. And as long as everything goes good there, he'll be activated to the Major League roster. So like I mentioned a little bit with Carrasco and the rotation as a whole, Katana's coming. And it is at this point what I will call at the front door of happening.
The biggest question is when he does return, how is he going to perform? I mean, we looked at some of his recent years, his stats, and they're shaky.
It's every other year kind of almost in a way.
You just kind of don't know what you're going to get. But then I also think about, like, at this point, could he be any worse than some of the guys they've had on the roster? You know, like when Tyler McGill has struggled, or Joey Lucchese's had his bad outing. Or, you know, what's another guy that I'm forgetting? What's his name? Who's the other guy from AAA? I'm drawing a blank.
Peterson?
Yeah, Peterson. I mean, before his last couple starts, he was awful.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he still has a +6 ERA, so
Yep.
There's that. All right, so I mentioned the depth, right? Right-hand pitchers Trevor Gott and Chris Flexen acquired from the Mariners for left-handed reliever Zach Muckenhern. Flexen has since been DFA'd. He's also a former Met anyway in the first place, so that's, you know, a nice little reunion until that happened. I'm intrigued by the Trevor Gott portion of this. I know it's mostly for depth, but he had a really, like, renaissance year last year with Seattle. Was banged up this year. Seattle's also trying to figure some stuff out, so I don't know what to fully make of this trade. I think it was just kind of swapping bullpen pieces between two teams. They kind of are trying to figure it out more or less, but Gott intrigues me more than Flexen does, and obviously, you know, the Mets see Flexen more as the depth piece because they had to clear a 40-man spot, and he was the victim 2 days after the trade for it.
Yeah, that trade was, like, just so random and odd. What was that, like, over the weekend when that broke, I think?
Yeah, Saturday, I think.
Yeah, I was just, like, caught off guard. I was like, wow, what a weird trade, but I guess, you know, they wanted to do something. But I do think they made the right move getting rid of Zach Muckenhern. The guy wasn't that great. And I think Seattle lost this trade. They're getting a guy that just hasn't been good and hasn't had that much experience at the big league level.
Right.
So it was just an interesting, weird trade to me.
Yeah, like I said, to me it was just two teams struggling in that regard, and they were just kind of swapping pieces to see if they'd work or not. You know, I know Muckenhern still has options available. I know Flexen doesn't, obviously, if they just DFA'd him. I think Gott maybe has one or two, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'm pretty intrigued by really kind of everything that might happen there. I'll jump ahead on notes-wise, but the 40-man spot was to clear a spot in the 40-man for DJ Stewart, who comes up, and somebody said on Twitter has already done more than Vogelbach has in a couple of
had a sack fly in his first game.
Yeah, so, but DJ's done a really good job at Syracuse and definitely deserved this opportunity to at least get a shot here with this week run-up to the All-Star break. I know the Yankee portion of this, we know it quite well, right, because he's a Baltimore kid, was brought up through the Orioles system, and the past couple of years has been a trudge through AAA baseball trying to get back to the majors. And, you know, like you mentioned, first at bat, it ended up being a big sack fly, in all honesty, to bring in a needed insurance run the way the ninth inning actually played out Tuesday night for the Mets.
Yeah, I thought for sure that the bullpen was going to blow that game just the way it's gone. But, yeah, he was I like the move there. But what about Tim LeCastro? I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, the update on him is still post-All-Star break.
Because I'm wondering if he's healthy. Is he the move that would have been made over Stewart? Or,
yeah.
But, yeah, I think eventually LeCastro will be back up for sure.
Yeah, I mean, all signs still point for LeCastro post-All-Star break, at least returning to Syracuse for action. So just a couple other news and notes. Danny Mendick, shortstop, and right-hander reliever Jeff Brigham, both option to AAA Syracuse, and reliever right-hander Denny Reyes was designated for assignment. He had been at Syracuse mostly, so it's just more or less clearing a 40-man spot there. So they'll do it on that side of things for the Mets. Let's turn our attention to tonight. They look to sweep That's right, sweep the Arizona Diamondbacks. I don't think that's a phrase that we've said in a while, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know how many sweeps they've even had this year.
Right.
Feels like 0.
Not many, I know that. So tonight, Thursday, 9:40 on SNY or MLB Network, depending upon what market you're in, it's Carlos Carrasco, 2-3 against Ryan Nelson, 5-4, former prospect, top prospect for the Diamondbacks. I'll jump ahead and say it. I'll do it. I'll drink the Kool-Aid. I don't really care. They get the sweep. And this is somebody from a guy who has faded Ryan Nelson a ton betting-wise. So I will gladly have to bite the bullet if they lose. But I will go sweep tonight. And I think it's also a little bit because Carrasco knows he's probably pitching at least for a spot in the rotation.
Yeah. Fine, I'll say it. Sweep.
Yes, attaboy. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel?
I just think the vibes are too high right now to lose, but I could see them going to lose to the Padres this weekend.
Yeah. Speaking of, you teed it up perfectly. The final series for the Mets before the All-Star break at San Diego. Tomorrow night, Friday, 9:40 on SNY. Justin Verlander, 3-4 against Yu Darvish, 5-6. Saturday is a 10:10 first pitch on SNY or MLB Network, depending upon your market. David Pearson, 2-6 against Blake Snell, 5-7. And then both pitchers on Sunday to be determined for both teams, but it's a 4:10 first pitch on your local picks affiliate. Yeah, this Padres team, they're a lot like the Mets, to be completely honest with you. I don't know what to make of them. They should be better than they are, and they just aren't. They DFA'd Nelson Cruz, who just gets caught being a victim of circumstance in this deal. I think the Mets do take 2 of 3, though, against San Diego. I think the only loss they get is probably on Saturday. Blake Snell, like I said, it's 5-7 for him, but he's got a 3.03 ERA. So he has been one of the few bright spots for San Diego this year. But I think the Mets take 2 of 3, go in the All-Star break strong. Kind of, like I said, I think they keep the vibes going, quite frankly, that they've had the past week.
Sorry for. I'm just thinking. I know it's weird silence for everybody.
You're
but,
fine. I know. You were slaving away on that keyboard over there just now.
Yeah, just trying to keep out everything. I don't know. Well, one of 3 for the Mets.
Oof.
Yeah.
You don't think the vibes stay?
No.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's wrap up here quickly with our friends in Rochester and Syracuse. It's been a tale, more or less, of 2 weeks for the teams. Rochester went 3-4 this past week. Syracuse 0-6. It's been a lot of roster movement on both ends. I get that, but to me, it's more of an indication too, though, of maybe where they've been collectively all year. When you see Rochester go 3-4 or 3-4 in the week, but they've been super at least in ball games. And Syracuse, for the most part, kind of has, I'd say, limped to the finish line in these games in a way where it's like, eesh, not the best once again for the S-Mets. And at least early on here, I'll have to take it. I thought both would be really up there, and Rochester, despite them being tied for 11th in the grand scheme of it, they're only 2 games back of first place, I think. I can't remember who it is exactly, but I know they're undefeated. They're 7-0 or 8-0 technically to start the second half, which hats off to you if that's what you're doing in that sense. Whereas Syracuse, I mean, if we kind of go back to maybe like we get out of that first series of the year when they just kind of went off the rails at that point. It's like, okay. And I know there's a lot of first-year stuff kind of with Syracuse, managerially and stuff like that, but, like, damn. We certainly had high hopes for them, especially the way they finished off the first half of the season.
These 2 teams flip-flop so much. You just don't even know what to expect. I mean, even the Red Wings could have a better record. If you look at those 4 losses,
right. I mean,
a couple of them are close.
Like I said, they've been in like every game.
Yeah, so it's just like, it's just so unpredictable with these teams. I guess that's just AAA. But yeah, the Mets have dug themselves in a hole already. Yikes.
Yeah, a couple, like I mentioned, the roster moves already. Left-hand reliever Tim Cate was assigned from Double A Harrisburg for Rochester. Where you get in there, left-hander Jose A. Fier was recalled by Washington. Catcher Luis Torrens was released. He asked for his opt-out in his deal. Right-hand pitcher Volpe Javier was assigned to Double A Harrisburg. Right-hand pitchers Daniel Magnan was assigned to Rochester. Outfielder Alex Call was recalled by Washington. For Syracuse, shortstop Jose Peraza was sent on a rehab assignment to the Complex League Mets in Florida. Reliever, name that we talked about a ton for the big league club, Alicia Hernandez was assigned to Syracuse, and outfielder Abraham Almonte was assigned as well. Alex Valverde, the right-handed reliever, was activated. So a lot of shaking to get going here for this the second half of the season for both teams. That tends to happen. We have the next kind of, like I mentioned, these rounds of veteran contracts are set to either have their opt-outs where you can opt in to do that and be released and become a free agent, or you opt back in for another few weeks. I'd expect we'll probably see some more movement here in the coming days. What's interesting is I think it's going to be a telling situation. I don't see that maybe happening in Rochester, to be quite honest, and in Syracuse. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of those veteran guys maybe exercise that opt-out. Your Abraham Almontes maybe, even though I know he just got back off the injured list. But I wouldn't be surprised if he hypothetically were to do it. You know, I think it's fair to kind of wonder if in those situations, whereas with Rochester they've been competitive and we talked about a ton, right? It's just been a different kind of energy in Rochester, it seems like, this year compared to Syracuse.
Let's give a shout out to Luke Voigt real quick.
Yes.
I'm sure you saw everything that went down with him with his, what was it, no shirt underneath the jersey?
No sleeves, baby.
Yeah.
This is the vest jersey.
And then homers in his final bat, doing it.
Off the scoreboard.
So that's the guy, right, too, that has an opt-out very soon, I would think.
I think because of how late he is still, I think, 10 days away from his, first threshold of it.
And then with the All-Star break coming up, he's not going to be called up. Right. So unless there's some injury in the next, couple days. But
right. Well, I mean, the thing is, too, I think we kind of forget, like, AAA, even though there's no All-Star game for anywhere in the minors, again, they do exercise the All-Star break. When we come back and reconvene on Monday, we'll have nothing to preview for the next 4 days across the board.
We're going to be talking about the home run derby, right? Picking our winners.
Bring your bracket.
Go Julio Rodriguez.
Hey, bring your bracket.
I'm not a fan of a lot of guys that are in it, and I don't like some of the guys that are in it.
It's an interesting one.
Let's bring more stars in it.
They tried this year. I know they did try this year.
Like Luis Robert, great player. I like him, but is that really a guy that everyone wants to go see in the home run derby?
I know they tried this year. This goes back to my overall problem, I think, with a lot of these competitions, is the fact that if you want to grow the game and you're a player saying you want to grow the game, then don't back away when you're offered the opportunity to go.
And no Ohtani. I just thought about that.
Did
he just decline it straight out, or?
I think it had to do him with because it was just announced he won't pitch in the All-Star game. He'll bat, but he won't pitch. I think it had more to do with they weren't sure where he was going to be rotationally yet. And I mean, frankly, if you're the Angels at this point, I don't know if you want your batters or anybody for that matter doing any more extracurriculars, because they might have lost Rendon for an extended period again. The Angels have taken a beating the past 10 days.
Yeah, imagine a home run derby. It would never happen, but Stanton, Judge, Ohtani, Alonso.
You kidding me?
I mean, that would be so fun.
Jordan.
Oh yeah, another good guy. Yep.
Oh, gosh.
I'm sure Mike Trout would find his way there.
Yeah,
but see what I mean? More of the stars. You see what I mean? I know a lot of guys don't want to do it because, they just want the break, or they just don't want to do it.
But to be fair, look at Pete Alonso's not afraid to back down from this. Pete Alonso's all in on trying to take another crowd. That's his thing. His whole entire mantra coming into it is just I'm just. And to be fair, it's the same with Vlad Jr. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is the same mindset. He's I just went out there to hit home runs. Let's see what happens. I at least respect them for going out and just doing it.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people don't really watch the home run derby, or they don't care to watch it. But I always like it just for something to do. I mean, it's the break. There's nothing else really to watch. Baseball's the only thing that's on right now.
And I do like the knockout format they have now. I think it's just a nice little new twist on it, and You know, I still enjoy it. It's fun. Who doesn't like dingers?
Yeah, Julio in Seattle is going to win it.
Oh, well, you can save that for Monday. You know that, right?
We'll bring it back up. I'll have some more thoughts, more
All right.
more opinions.
I respect it. All right, so that will take care of Concrete Jungle for today. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. I know this one was definitely a longer one, but we had a lot to get to after the week off. So we'll be back Monday. No worries there. We aren't no holiday running into this situation. So until then, enjoy the baseball, enjoy the weekend, everybody, and we'll talk with everybody on Monday.